Okay, this is like, I'm super excited to do this. For those of you who have not met my team, Elisa Anthony and Catherine Kalu, am I saying that right? God. Uh,
Yeah.
I decided, because a lot of people have said, in running into people, I want to start a podcast. Or how hard is it? And I thought, of all things to do, like, we should do a podcast on how to start a podcast from scratch. Because if anything, the three of us, well, you two for sure, know how to put this together. So before we get into it, I want to have you guys do exactly what I do with all my guests, is tell everybody a little bit about yourself and include some personal stuff, as well as what you do for us here at the Retail Whore Podcast. Elisa, we will start with you. Oh God.
Okay. Oh God. My name is Elisa Anthony, longtime friend of Michelle Sherrier since we were 16. I come from the publishing world, resigned after a long stretch of 15 years at the LA Weekly as the advertising director and all things digital marketing, and left LA almost a year and a half ago. I can't believe it's already been that long.
Wow.
And took over my aunt's vineyard. We are officially grape growers here in Southern Oregon on a 12-acre vineyard. So life-changing, but love it, and loving this new world of podcasting. And I handle the social media, guest intake, show notes, and kind of doing some heavy lifting for Michelle when she gets, a little busy, which is more often than not.
A lot.
Kind of a right-hand man.
Exactly. You're my bra. You
I
uplift
am.
and
I am.
support.
I lift and separate.
Support.
I'm feeling that. That's hysterical.
Catherine.
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that one up. Okay. Hi, I'm Catherine Kalu. I do the podcast editing and production of The Retail Whore, which is so fun and such a joy. What about me? Born and raised in LA, from here my whole life. I went to Chapman University and studied political science and communication, and then stuck around for 2 more years to get my master's in communication. Finished up my master's last year, and I've been doing podcast editing first for myself. I have my own podcast called Soul Chats that I do as my hobby. And a mutual friend of me and Michelle's connected us to see if I could, help out Michelle in figuring out how to make the Retail Whore come to life. And it was a match made in heaven, and here we are ever since, doing the thing every week and having the best time doing it.
Yeah, what people don't realize is, like, Elisa and I obviously have been friends since childhood, but Catherine and I have never met, like, because we started this during the pandemic. And it was like, okay, well, we obviously can't meet now. And then it just got longer and just got long. And now it's like kind of the standing joke. Like, I've never met you in person. I think that's hilarious. And I will say that the symmetry between the three of us and how well we all work together. I mean, it's, for the most part, we are all communicating majority on email, but by far and large, a big portion of it is on group text. And it all runs very smooth. I mean, it's when I really think about people I've worked with and whatnot, the fact that how smooth this works, and it's working on group texts.
But I think that's really the beauty of it, is the technology's out there that anybody can do this with this technology, with group texting, with Zoom, with all that's enabled, and a lot of people to do this and run that business smoothly, because there's no lack of communication.
Oh yeah.
It's not just email. Yeah. Catherine's probably like, oh God, there's Elisa and Michelle with 6 a.m. texts.
No, my favorite thing to wake up to in the morning. And no, it's great. I think,
really.
Oh my God, the podcast isn't populating.
I was like, oh no, what did I do wrong? Here we go. No, I
Yeah,
can't
we'll
do
we'll
that.
get into that part of like the panic test. But so for those of you, I mean, I talk about it on the podcast a lot. For those of you who don't know, like I literally started this on a whim. I mean, it started with doing live Instagrams, interviews of people that I knew in retail, just to hear what they were doing, what worked, what didn't, like how they were pivoting. And I got back to work and I got busy and I went back to my normal job. And David bought me a microphone a long time ago, like when I kind of first started talking about like, oh, I want to do this. And I literally, like, it sat on my desk and mocked me for years, like what I constantly say. But I literally just got back to doing work like Instagram lives. I think I've only gone live once since I was doing lives way back then. But all of a sudden it was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And like typical Michelle fashion of no idea how the fuck it happens. Like, I'm going to start a podcast. So I reached out to Christina, who was what she worked for me at a store that I helped build a brand. It was called Sweet XO. She was what I call my mini me. I absolutely adore her. She was with us for a long time. I think she was with us until the stores closed. And then she introduced me to Catherine. I'd already talked to Elise about helping out. And I think all of us, well, if I think about Catherine's and my conversation of like, okay, I have this much to spend. I think we can, I think about, oh my God, I have this much to spend, which means X amount with your hourly. We could probably do to this. And I still remember we were like, I don't know, like 6 episodes in, you're like, okay, we're at that amount. Like, are you still good? I'm all, oh yeah, I'm fine now.
Right.
And then Elisa was like, I think for you were like, sure, I'll help you with your little project. Like, I mean,
well, I was in the mode where I was at COVID, after the shutdown, things were slowly starting to open up again, September, October of 2020.
were you done with LA Weekly yet?
I had just resigned and kind of like looking for that new going independent rather than working for a company, but still wanting to, hadn't solidified anything, was just looking to just kind of take pause. So what this allowed me to do is to still stay in the know from a marketing standpoint, but also add to my skill set, because I had always had a team that executed this. So I had never gone in and done it myself. So I was like, I'll learn this. I love podcasts, sure, and help you and learn at the same time and be like, this is cool. This will keep me busy, and until I kind of figure out where I want to land next. So yeah, I mean, it was perfect timing.
And then here we are now, a year, however many months, and
July 2020.
I think so.
No, July.
But we started earlier. I mean, I tell the story of like when I went off to record the pre-roll or the intro and the pre-roll. I was so like, I need to be away from everybody, my dog. So my neighbors who have this amazing place in Catalina, I'm like, going to Catalina, I'm going to bring the recording stuff. I'm going to record intro. And went there and it was quiet because the pandemic was still like more or less like people really weren't traveling. So Catalina was pretty quiet at that point. You didn't hear all the golf carts in the background. And I sat there and said, hi, this is Michelle Sherrier and welcome to the Retail More Podcast. I must have recorded the same fucking sentence like 30 times and all different octaves. Like, and I think about that now and me sending you that file, you must have been like, am I hearing something wrong? Is this the same thing over and over?
It was so great. It was so sweet. Because I know what it feels like. And I think that's the scariest, one of the scariest things when starting a podcast. It's like doing your first recording and you just like micro analyze every like cadence, every octave. And I could just hear that in every single, and so I listened to each one and I was like, which one was my favorite? Let's go with this one. And I was like, does this sound good to you? And you're like, they all sound the same. They sound great. I was like, fantastic. Let's do it. So
oh my God.
it's very real. I think that's a really relatable thing.
Well, it's for sure, for sure real. That's for damn sure. But I think when we all finally decided we're going to do it, it's like, then it's like, as Elisa puts it, we're building the plane mid-flight. So kind of talk to me about like the background part of like, was it Elisa's part that which of you had to deal with the stuff at first? Like how did, like in the beginning, like I record my intros. I think I had my first recording. We decided we're going to record on GarageBand because it's the easiest and the most accessible. We were not recording on Zoom yet because I think the first one was the Kingfisher Girls, and we are not on video. It's like, right?
Well, but more importantly, that's a piece of the puzzle. So I kind of look at this as front of house, back of house. So what I was doing was you were securing domain name, the name of the podcast.
Yeah, here we go.
You found Podpage, which is a platform that just creates websites, and it just aggregates all that data.
And go figure, I found that.
Specifically for, I know, I was like, way to go. So building all that, then Catherine mentioned Buzzsprout, and then it was like putting that stuff on the directory. So there's a lot of like, it's all good when you have the recording, but you got to have a place to put all that stuff. So that's kind of what I was doing. And then we were creating Instagrams and kind of thinking about, okay, what's the message? How do we want to set this up? You had somebody create a logo for you.
Yep.
So you had the content because you're so knowledgeable in the industry. So that's super key, but it was kind of the back end stuff that we were kind of figuring out. And I was working with Catherine, like, I need an RSS feed, Google RSS feed. What is this? Oh, this is going to aggregate all this data as we have. So it was kind of doing that. That was where I started, I know. And then Catherine and I were kind of working closely with that. And she was helping me because you had already started your podcast, right?
Yeah. I had started it then, so I had that knowledge to be able. I use Buzzsprout for my own, and I really liked it. And I was like, there are different options, but I think this is the good one.
Yeah.
And figuring a lot of it is just like, what is an RSS? What does that mean? That's there's like so many like niche, but like you said, the internet's so awesome and accessible nowadays. Like if you have the patience and time, like you really can just sit down and Google and watch YouTube and listen to podcast episodes like this that tell you what to do. And you like you said, build the plane as you fly it. So it's a diligent process, but we did it.
So let's talk about first. Okay, so we record on Zoom. Before we're recording on in it. I will say, if you don't care about having a visual, then you can record everything on GarageBand, and GarageBand is what I record the intros for our guests. And I think that's really the only thing I use it for now is just intro. So GarageBand is a recording that if you don't want visual, now we record everything on Zoom. But talk to everyone about Catherine, talk about Buzzsprout, and then Elisa talk about what the Podpage and like how these two things work together with the recording.
Yeah. So the way, you see podcasts and you go onto, Apple Podcasts, Spotify are probably the two main platforms, or all sorts of different apps and platforms where you can listen to podcasts. And people, I think, assume you have to like go and individually submit kind of your episode or your podcast to each one. And that's not the case, right? There are podcasts, I think the correct term is like podcast hosts, where essentially you find a podcast host. So we use Buzzsprout. There's one popular one I think it's called Anchor. That one's free. Most of them have like a small fee each month, kind of depending on what you're looking for, how many hours, that sort of thing. But essentially, it's the platform where you host your podcast. So you upload everything onto there. You put all the details that are related to your episode onto there, schedule it, and then it distributes it for you to all of those sorts of different platforms.
The directories.
Directories, yes, thank you. So there's a little bit of work in setting it up on the back end, right? Because you need to let them know, okay, which platforms and directories do you want to exist on? And sometimes, depending on that directory, you need to go ahead and make an individual account there so it can sync up. And there, you have to figure out kind of the back end things and setting it up. But once you do, it's pretty plug in and plug out. And I'll, take Michelle's content and edit it, and then going ahead and uploading it. And Elisa's over here, our master wordsmith, who will send me all the info we need for the episode, and you input that and schedule it out. And now we're in a good flow with it. But that, I think, is in essence how the process works.
So you don't have to have it on all platforms. You can pick and choose, like, we only want to be on Spotify and we only want to be on Apple, and that's it. But we've chosen to be, we're on almost all of them, correct? Like iHeart Music.
Well, that's where Podpage comes in. You can put it in there and you put in, again, the RSS feed. And the beauty of that, which
What is
is
RSS feed? Just so people know.
the RSS feed, and let me see, I'm going to Google this right now so I don't give anybody any misinformation.
Because I know that
It's basically like a line of code or a URL that points to where the podcast is parked on Buzzsprout. And as new information is populated there, it'll constantly pull that data. So it's updating. Now I have that URL RSS feed code on Podpage, and that's the beauty of Podpage. You put that in and it will post everything on those directories that you choose. So it's really plug and play, and it's literally a platform that's created for the creation of websites for podcasts. And I love it. I've only maybe had 1 or 2 issues, and it was more like, oh, there was a glitch, we're working on it, and they fixed it. Great. I mean, I can't tell them, Podpage, way to go.
So let's we should be tagging them on this also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love to have you have a sponsor, Podpage.
Yeah, Podpage. Lisa, talk a little bit about more Podpage, because things that people don't, and I even mentioned it to my neighbor, the realtor, yesterday. I said, the beauty of Podpage is that they have tools like legal forms for waivers. So talk about that a little bit, because I don't think people realize, like, there's a little bit of a legality of putting stuff out there with other people's names, information.
Yeah, which I didn't know, and I think you had broached that subject. I said, oh, let me look into that. I think we own that because they're agreeing to come on the podcast. But if you have someone that's like, you didn't have authorization, they offer guest intake form on there that you can then point people to. All our guests, always when they reserve their time and date for an interview, they are then pointed to the guest intake form. And it's basically just saying, you guys own this. It's okay if you guys post this on YouTube and your different platforms, and we're authorizing this interview. There's monetization if you want to start, as you grow, take on sponsors, which we've recently begun. And it shows you how to do that. It has the place for the episode show notes. I mean, it's got everything, and it's very, very user friendly. And if there's something you don't know, there was a couple things early on that I didn't know how to do, and I reached out and someone got back to me within the hour. I mean, it was really super quick response on that. So I'm a huge fan of Podpage, but for anybody looking to start a podcast, I would highly recommend that. And then work it in conjunction with Buzzsprout, where the podcast is parked, and then the left hand's talking to the right hand. So for instance, we had that issue where it wasn't populated. I wasn't seeing the new episode on Podpage, and then we refreshed and checked for new episodes, and it all of a sudden the left hand talked to the right hand. For some reason there was a glitch, but it was fixed really quickly. So they work.
I don't know if you saw the email back from Podpage. They responded really fast. Like, hey, Lisa, I saw your email. I don't know if you saw that. I mean, that I was like, wow, that was pretty fast. How fast?
Yeah, no, they're really, really great. And when you're dealing with tech like this, and you're like, my episode dropped, and people are used to seeing this, you want that rectified quickly. We've all been there when something, whether it's Instagram or it's Gmail, and it goes down, and it's like the world comes to an end. So you want to make sure that they're responding quickly. And I can't say enough good stuff about their tech support. So I highly recommend. And like I said, it's user friendly. It's plug and play. You can figure it out.
So now we know the 2 big pieces of the puzzle that you need.
We'll include these in the show notes. I'll include links to all these for our listeners here, so we can make it easy for them.
Maybe we can make like a checklist, a downloadable PDF checklist. Listen to me.
we can just do the links on there, but yeah, each link will be what people should do, and also like recording and feedback.
Yes,
and
we're going to talk about those little things now. So, well, okay, so now you have the two big pieces that, or three big pieces that you are going to be recording on and that you need. The next thing I would say is scheduling, because we before were just caught, like I still DM people like when I reach out, if I don't know them, which I don't know a lot of the people we're interviewing, I will. And before it was like, oh, can you do it this day? And you're going back and forth. And I don't remember, somebody's podcast that interviewed me sent me a Calendly, and I was like, hey, Lisa, will you look at this? Because I was able to go in and pick my date and time. So let's talk a little bit about Calendly and how Calendly works as well with Zoom and the scheduling aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's, you can put in your availability. So it's basically like like booking a doctor's appointment or booking, a spa treatment or something like that. You pick your day, you pick your time. We always each time frame is carved out for 60 minutes, but I always keep an additional hour available in case Michelle runs over. So it's not like boom, boom, boom. And we just, it's awesome. You just have a link there. Once a guest confirms their date and time, I get an alert, Michelle gets an alert, it populates into the Zoom calendar, and it's there, it's locked in. I have it now set up where once they confirm that, it redirects to the guest intake form. That's something I added last year. So it's just, it flows right through there. And then, it depends. A lot of people, Michelle, you do 52 episodes a year. So that's a lot for first time, but way to go. I mean, you've maintained that. I mean, that's not an easy task with maintaining a full-time 60-hour-a-week job.
Well, what do most people do? Like, how many, like, don't most podcasts come out once a week, or?
It depends. Yeah, I think, once a week is like the expected cadence, and the one I think that's like the sweet spot, because then, listeners are consistent with it. They know they can rely on, Wednesdays, I'm going to hear Michelle, and that's, kind of the cadence there. But a lot of podcasts these days that do that have that as their sole job. They're not, like Elise said, they're not doing a 60-hour full-time job on top of that.
Fucking nice.
Right? Yeah, the dream.
So Calendly, I'm going to talk about a little bit of a thing. So people all who, I've not been shy about saying I am not tech, because my schedule is so erratic, and there are times like right now I'm just walking out of my busy season that literally started. I never had a break. Usually it starts like before the show seasons and holidays. So it usually starts around April, May, the summer show happens. There's a little bit of a break, and then we roll right into fall and holiday. This year, because of certain jobs, like I never had that break. So I literally, my busy season's gone from last May to I'm just walking out of it after I get back from Magic next week. So I am constantly like, oh, my schedule's this and this changed and that changed. So Elisa, with Calendly, like you have to put in your availability, and you have to put in, block out whatever time. So Elisa gave me the rights to be able to, and again, I'm very clear that I am not tech. Elisa let me because it really is.
I mean, let's be honest. I don't remember letting you, quote unquote. I just remember you going in.
Oh, okay. So then I had the password then at that point.
Yeah,
so,
you had access to it because I
so-
didn't think.
So most documents, so everyone knows, I do not have, I am literally allowed to view them. I'm not allowed to touch them. And when you hear this story, you will know why Michelle is only allowed viewable access. I went in, and because I'm also dyslexic, I went in and I started putting in dates, because I wanted to not have to have Lisa do all of that bullshit. So I'm like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put my dates in, and because I don't completely understand how Calendly works, and it's like much like a spreadsheet, you start moving things around, all of a sudden everything's like
key sentence right there.
So I go in and I'm like backwards figuring out how to put in dates and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, Elisa, I sent it in, and she's like, great, whatever. Fast forward to something got booked. And I'm like, how did that get booked? I'm not even in town. And I go back and look, I'm like, but wait, I took those dates off. Well, who knows what happened, but apparently I completely changed. I had a whole another set of dates going.
Just created your whole new calendar. And I'm like, I don't need, I tried to reverse engineer it and I just went like, it's like baking. I just threw it in the trash and I went, all right, we're just going to start over.
So
I'm going to put in who's booked, email me, and I
Uh,
love you to death. You are cut off from this.
so
You are
now,
not to touch it.
that is another thing I'm only allowed to have views on, and
Yes.
that is why. I mean, I'm the first, and people laugh like, you really are not that untech savvy. Yeah, I am. So just saying it now so everyone can hear it. So now that we have
Calendly, good.
everything, now that we have everybody, whoever people are booked, it's automatically on Zoom. I
Mhm.
get on Zoom, we do this thing, and then I, where does it go from this point? I have to download it into a drive. We have a shared drive that all of us anything that we're doing goes into the shared drive, which is, I'm going to let you talk about that, Elisa, because obviously we've had some issues with me in the drive as well.
I know we should just call this technically challenged episode. That's got to be a whole other episode. But backing up really quick, just for listeners who are looking to start doing this, I think it's important, and Catherine, you can maybe piggyback off this. I think it's important for listeners to have, 4 episodes, 5 episodes, maybe just locked in before they start. Like, don't just do one, because it's like you want to have I would say a minimum of a month's worth, right?
At
10.
minimum.
We
At
had 10,
minimum.
I think
I would recommend more.
I think it was
Yeah.
10 is what you
Like,
had me do,
have a
so.
launch date. I know we set it for like July 7th. We wanted to start it right after 4th of July. And it was like, okay, Michelle, lock these in. And then we had those. So listeners, definitely
Yes.
have a bulk of episodes already pre-recorded and ready to launch. So
Here's what's tricky, especially considering this podcast is a majority interview based one. It's one thing when you're doing mostly solo episodes or you're doing a mix, because it's like, okay, if I don't have, I'm not always relying on guests to schedule and things, fall through. You just never know when there's 2 people or 3 people at play there, right? So especially with interview based podcasts, you definitely want to have, I would say, at minimum a month out, if not like Michelle said, 10, like 2 or 3, to give yourself that buffer, because things really, I'm sure with guests, like, fall over the place, like things, get through. Sometimes we'll have a recording, it gets to me, and that's something we can maybe talk about, but then it's like, we can't use this. This actually isn't enough, a good enough sound quality.
right.
And then that's a whole scrap and you have to start over from that. So make sure, episodes, also considering a trailer, right? There's a trailer option for most platforms that you're distributing your podcast on. Make sure you have that ready to go.
Yep.
And any sort of, like, Michelle, like we said, we have like our intro, our outro that we use consistently, right, for each episode. So having that ready to go so you can plug in and plug out, and giving yourself like as much buffer and as much ease, because once it gets started, it just, you got to go with it. Once you launch it, you're going with it. So yeah, really great point.
That reminds me. So you need an intro, you need the outro, and for now, that we'll talk about the sponsorships in a minute, but then you need a mid-roll. So, and also music, which we didn't talk about, like the intro music. So the intro music is literally, was very easy to do. What was the site that we pulled
That's a great question.
Because that was, I mean, you had me go to the site. I just listened to like a million fucking little
I'll find it and I'll send it to
bippity pop songs. So we'll have that in the notes, but once we decided what the music was going to be, then that, same thing. Catherine has that gets fed into each episode. So it's the intro music, the intro, and then, the intro for, the podcast itself, which is the same one. I'm Michelle Sherrier. And then the intro for, so it, that all gets downloaded into the drive. And then you pull it and edit it, correct?
Yeah. So I'll take what Michelle puts on the drive, and I go ahead and have fun with it, and I'll plug in, plug out, or I edit it so it matches. And that's the first thing too. It's like, whoever is going to be editing your podcast, like me and Michelle and Elisa had discussions of how do we want to format this? Like here, here are my suggestions. This is what people in the industry tend to do. How do we want to go about this for the retail horse? So from a strategic and kind of creative level of thinking, okay, so we're going to do, a consistent podcast intro, and then that's going to lead into a episode specific intro. And then we figured out, like, actually for solo episodes, we don't need that, episode specific intro, because that's just Michelle. So there's no need for that there, right?
Right.
So kind of figuring out like what is our structure for our episode. And we all kind of aligned on that, and that's what you hear today.
At least
And then as we've taken on sponsors, thank you to all our sponsors, by the way, we've had to integrate sponsor specific intros, pre-roll, mid-roll, stuff like that, which is segue where my living, breathing spreadsheet document comes into play.
Love that spreadsheet. Got that bookmark.
I mean,
that's the world I come from. It was just from managing many, client accounts and stuff. For me, that was the only possible way to keep track of stuff from digital marketing and, print advertising and stuff. I always had something on there.
Well, I don't think people realize, like, the one thing for, that spreadsheet is so people understand, like, there are so many balls in the air with recordings that haven't happened. Well, one, it starts with invitations going out to whoever.
Right. I have a section where you will send me, you copy me on all some prospects, right? Interview prospects. And then I will in turn piggyback off that email thread, send the Calendly link, and then it's kind of in this table where it's just like email sent out. Then at some point, people who have confirmed and have filled out the guest intake are now moved up to an interview schedule section where I have a tab that says interview scheduled with that time. And maybe some have filled out the guest intake, maybe some haven't. So I note that there's a column for that. So it's a constant move. And there's times where I'm like, oh God, I don't have that guest intake form, and Michelle's about to record within the hour. And I'm like, how did I
Which I'll say you're very resourcul. Like, you'll send me a LinkedIn thing.
Oh yeah, I'll go LinkedIn.
You're like the super sleuth.
I'll be like, oh my God, are there any magazine articles? Google, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and it's not a perfect science. There's definitely stuff that has slipped through the cracks. We're all human, but that allows us, because once again, it's something we all have access to. So I would highly recommend that for anybody who's starting a podcast, for your team members, whether it's view access or edit access, however you set that up with your team, you feel comfortable. It allows everybody to see what's going on and what everybody needs that's within their job description. Michelle will know. Michelle constantly will say to me, where am I at with intros? What do I need? And I can easily just look at that and say, I don't have this intro, or there have been times where I haven't updated it and I'll have to check into the drive and be like, oh, okay, we do have that intro. I forgot about that. So it's very useful, because as your podcast builds, you want to have a reference point. I mean, and see and be able to go back, oh, when did we interview this person? And we have all that. We just continue to create a new tab for each year. So
and for the people that don't respond, it gives you like, okay, these people didn't respond. So can you reach out on your end, Michelle? I'll reach out, and like, which I have a DM I've got to send you.
But yeah, there's times where we can go back and say, you know what, this recording for whatever reason, it didn't upload or it didn't record. We had a tech glitch for whatever reason. We should go back to this person, because we still have we have their bio, we have everything. We should circle back on that, because with your industry, as you well know, it's, people are busy. You got shows, you got this. And so it's really trying to find the time for people and respecting their time.
Yep.
And trying to get them in here and provide their knowledge base, which our listeners love.
Because like I was saying, there's so many balls in the air that I think that the bigger it got and the more people that were involved, like I am organized, but not tech organized. I'm organized by notes and, things that, like how I do it, but you
Right.
can't do that at this point in the game. There's just too many balls in the air, and there's too many things that could go off, and like, you completely forget about it. It's like the day before the episode, oh shit. Like,
Yeah, I think for each one of us plays such a pivotal role in the success of this podcast. Truly, I mean, obviously without your knowledge base, and then I'm kind of like the weird type A, my mind's super vertical. You know what I mean? It's like, name the file this so we can find it easily. I'm kind of on the back there making sure everything is easy. And then Catherine takes my stuff, and then makes this beautiful edit of the podcast. So it's the secret cookie recipe that just is really working. I love it.
so there's a couple of things I want to circle back on is, the ultimate, how it ends up, like, the intro, the show notes, the links, all that, which we'll go back to, but I want to talk a little bit about things that are glitches that you don't realize until, it's too late, or, you realize midway. The biggest one we had was making sure that your guests have good internet service, and that you do not have things in your room, office, whatever, still on Bluetooth because of the feedback. So Lisa or Catherine, whichever one, someone talk about that, because that was a huge one. And it was, the sound quality, like it literally, I will say, just because of a couple times I've had to go back with my tail tucked between my legs, is like, I am so sorry, but this is what I don't think we knew what was doing it at first, the feedback we were getting, but like having to go, because I'm super, like you said, respectful of our guests. Like, I'm so cognizant of how much time we've spent bullshitting on Zoom and talking. And now it's like, oh fuck, we have to like we can't even use this now. Like
Mhm.
it's horrifying. You, Lisa, always remind me, like, please, it's tech. This happens. You don't think this doesn't happen to Joe Rogan. You don't think this doesn't happen to other people
Yeah.
podcasts, like, but it's horrifying. So talk a little bit about like that, how we figured that out, and what the solution is now.
I'm gonna let Catherine take that one because of her experience with podcasts. And I mean, I know airplane mode was one of the ones, right? And not using AirPods was something
Yeah,
that was
so
beneficial.
it's really tricky because there's so many like things at play here, right? So I think one of you guys are actually ones who figured out the Bluetooth aspect of it. I know on my end, one thing that I really made clear to Michelle was what's really helpful in terms of feedback, because sometimes, and it just depends on the Wi-Fi quality and the lagging and all that stuff. So it's like a really niche, sensitive thing. But sometimes if people don't have headphones in, so they have like their speaker going right with the interview and with the interaction, and the Wi-Fi is lagging, all of a sudden now you can hear yourself like feedback, right?
Mhm.
So I always recommend, okay, if the Wi-Fi is not steady, make sure you have some sort of headphone in so that you're not hearing yourself twice. One. Two, some people's like microphone on, most people are just using their laptop, which is great. Most people's microphone on their laptop sometimes is damaged and they don't realize, or isn't, the best of quality. So especially towards the beginning, what I recommended was the ones Elisa's has on, actually, those like not the AirPods, but like the actual head, I don't know what to call those, like headbuds, headphones.
Lightnings, yeah. I mean, the
Yes,
old school ones
where you have
that
that
hang.
little volume thing where there's your mic's in there. So you have a mic, that's most people tend to have those types of headphones. You don't have to get a professional mic, but you have something there to use. That's probably like the first thing to keep in mind, right? And then figuring out, okay, in terms of static and noise and Zoom and Wi-Fi, Michelle's such like a professional now and trying to figure out like, okay, like I can't hear you. Let's take a second. Let's figure this out. And it's fun on my end because I get to hear that. And I'm like, okay, they're taking it out. We gotta cut this out.
I've
Like
actually had to show pictures, like, do you have this on?
Right. And turning off like I mean, it's like sometimes you got to turn off your Alexa and stuff like that. Like you just need to just really have everything pointing towards your mic and your system for your recording. And we're just in such this tech world where everything's Wi-Fi, right? Everything's just locked into everything. So it's definitely sometimes kind of challenging, but I think we've gotten down. I don't feel like we've had a feedback episode. We've had Wi-Fi, we've had cutout where
Yeah.
you know, either you or the guest was maybe in a place that was cutting in and out, and we've had to kind of play with that or just scrap it. But all in all, I think we've kind of fixed that issue, right?
I mean,
recall.
I think really it's only internet, and it's usually the other person, like Amanda from Women Owned,
Wallet.
Wow, Women Owned Wallet. She's in her store is in a historical building that's like hundreds of years old, and it has very, like, you know, the internet lines are not as strong as they would be like in new construction, and hers, like, you know, she had to move around, I think 3 times, and there's still parts that I think Catherine had to cut out. And that's one thing. It's like, when it gets down to that, you have to rely on your editor, or yourself, if you're doing it, is to listen to the quality, because how long are you going to expect people listening? Like, fuck, this is annoying. Like, it's all fuzzy and it's like, it keeps cutting out. It's like, you have to weigh out like how people are going to listen to it. Like, are they going to just abort the whole thing because they're annoyed? Or is it like, it's okay enough to be able to listen to? I still remember Damon and the how ironic it was that Damon,
oh my gosh,
on Schweikert Audio, which is like one of the top tiered audio
premier leading audio
in the world, that his audio was so bad. It was like, the irony was not left on, on that episode.
I was like, oh no. He's probably like,
I mean, at least he understood, but good God, I'm like, wow. So I want to turn the tables on you guys and find out, like, okay, and you have to be totally honest, like, what's the most frustrating thing working with me? Because I'm going to do the same thing to Dave in our recording. So
okay,
you Elisa, because you know me the best, what's the most frustrating thing working with me?
but probably just the tech stuff where I have everything accessible for you to look at, and I know I've sent it, and I'm like, it's like on the spreadsheet. Why are you asking me what intros? You know, probably that. But it's not even frustrating because I've known you forever. It's like, it's like, oh, it's like, if you were just sitting on your ass, I'd be like, really? You can't like just look at this, but I know you're running 1,000 miles an hour in your heads. I'm in your head. So it doesn't, it's not, yeah. I mean, I speak Michelle very fluently, so I don't, it's really not frustrating. I'll let you know. I'll be like, Michelle, it's in there. You'll know.
Oh, I know. Catherine, now your turn.
I really like,
you have to be honest. You can't.
I know, I'm really trying to think, and it's like, I think what it is, like, Elisa is almost like also simultaneously like our project manager. So I think a lot of like the kinks that I could be frustrated with, she like resolves that, right? Like, she has a spreadsheet. She's the buffer. So I think by the time it gets to me, I love it. Like, you know, you chat with me on the on the podcast sometimes. Like, you're like, hey Catherine, like, how you doing? And
I know when I listen and I'm doing the show notes, I hear Michelle go, oh fuck. Okay. Yeah, Catherine, from here we're gonna do this. And then that's my editor. I'm just talking to her. She'll fix this. And I'm like,
my favorite
perfect.
Part.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate that, because it makes my job easy. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, does she want that in there? Because sometimes I'm like, this is fun. Like, this is a funny personality bit, and like, it could be, you know, and it's good for me to know, like, nope, Michelle wants this out. Cool, good to go. No, you're really great at communicating. You're an awesome boss. I really can't.
It wasn't supposed to be that. It was supposed to be things that frustrate you.
Just trying to rave about you over here.
Oh God, no. So when what was one of the other glitches?
So what do we frustrate you with?
Yeah.
Turn around, fair play.
nothing really, because you guys understand like where like I'm standing in the middle of a showroom trying to answer something or try and fix something or hear something, and you guys are pretty patient when I'm like, I can't, there's nothing I can do with it right now. I'm standing in the middle of a showroom with zero internet service, and like for Steven, there was no internet service for the first 2 months. Like everything
Yeah.
would have to wait. And then, coming home was like, then I just forget. And it was like, I don't know, but there's really not, because you got, like I said, you understand why, I may be suck at communicating or, not, but really not. I mean, I'm, like
No,
I
I
said,
think we
I've
just,
always,
that's what I'm saying. I don't think there's anything, because we can each problem solve if there's something that's going on, like Michelle, like, I don't know, I saved it. I don't know where that recording is.
oh
And I'm
God,
like,
let's talk about those.
I don't know where they go. I'm still wondering where they go.
I got,
I think, and this is the caveat. I know you and I, Michelle, spoke about this yesterday on our Friday huddle Zoom call, but important when downloading, once you've recorded your interview with your guest, because they are, it's a large file, right? Don't just walk away and assume that it's downloaded.
Yeah.
Make sure that completes, because again, there's internet issues. You could have a hiccup. You could have a super strong line, and for some reason your Wi-Fi went down. It happens to everybody, no matter whether you have a regular line or a T3 line. But make sure, see? Okay, that's what frustrates me. No, I'm kidding. Listeners, Michelle just got up and walked away from our call. But anyway, our recording. But
open the door.
make sure your episode downloads. Super important.
Because downloading it to the drive, again, like Michelle's not very tech, so I would start the download process and I didn't realize, you can't exit out and go start working on something else.
Well, your ADD went into hard overdrive, and I'm like, oh, there she goes.
You both have like been very good about saying, well, you, Elisa, have been very good because you know me so well, of like slow down. And Dave says the same thing to me. It's like, because, and when I work with other people that are like me, I watch them like hitting a button like it's gonna make it go faster. And it's like, slow down.
Yeah.
But I think when you're done recording, it's like, okay, the first thing I do is throw it, like download it into the drive. So it's like but I have exited out, which obviously that stops the whole process. And then I forget. And the one thing I will say is like, I do not erase, or I don't trash these interviews until I know it's been edited and it's actually scheduled. Like I save them on my what the fuck is this called? The desktop. I save them on the desk. I pull it out of the recording. I save it on the desktop, and I will leave it there until it's already been scheduled to air, because I'm petrified of, oh, I threw that away. It's like, that's already gone. Like there's no more. So because we have had a couple, sadly, that, the recording is just like, either the sound was so bad that we couldn't use it at all. But the few that we have, that the recording has just like Jamie, thank God Jamie from Sarah and Jane was so understanding, because hers was one of them where we like had this amazing conversation and it was like so great. And then it was like, where is it? And I go into full panic, and then Elisa has to talk me off the ledge. Like, I mean, panic, like where I think I cried that one, because I was
for sure.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
it's fine. It's not,
because I go to, and I've talked about this before, I go to that place of like in school where you're so stupid, I can't believe you did this. Like, that's literally where I go. So Elisa has like that I don't go there anymore. I get frustrated and pissed off at myself, but I don't cry now. Like I mean,
yeah, but it's like, but let me ask you, I mean, here's something that you could enlighten listeners to, Michelle. So in regards to after you're done, your process. So now you've interviewed your guest, like what is your process in prepping for an interview? And number two, do you find it easier to do your intro regarding the guest directly after your interview, or do you find that it's easy to just take a moment and come back to it? Forget about the logistic part of it, that it makes more sense to do it right out. But what do you feel from an engagement standpoint works best for you?
Well, I think I've learned not to wait too long, because then it's like, fuck, what do we talk about? Like what?
Right.
And I think yesterday when I did the interview with Allison and Kat, and then Sean Jimenez, I did their intros right after, because it's fresh and it's on your mind. So it's like, it's way easier. Do I want to do that sometimes because of my anxiousness and my ADD? No, but I know from sitting there, because like what people don't realize, like trying to, and now you guys have me doing take one, take two, take three, and it's like before I didn't know that you can't just re-record over it. So I'm thinking I'm deleting it off of it. And apparently it was still saving it, and you guys hear every single one of the fucked up ones. But like now before and after that, then I would just like trash the whole thing and start a whole new one. And like, I can't begin to tell you how many times sometimes if I can't remember what we talked about and the guest, it's easy to do it with people that I have that really strong connection and like we're friends also. But I literally, there are times where I literally will record it like 20 times and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, and there's simple.
Oh, I've heard it. I've heard like, oh, motherfucker.
And some
okay.
of them, there's simple things, and some of them, it's just like, I get tongue tied, or
It's not easy.
I don't pronounce something right. So it is way easier. Like yesterday, I'll say also taking 2 months off of recording anything, like I really missed it, but I realized that I didn't have the bandwidth to try and have a conversation with somebody after work, especially with how I was feeling in Vegas. And
well, I know there was one that you did, and I said, you know what, you need to re-record this. You sound like you just, it's like, is this like, are we at a funeral? What is going on?
I wonder which
You were
one.
like, I'm just like this, and I had this, she's a really good guy. And I was like, no, you are so fried right now from work and
Yeah.
whatever job you were working. It may have been during setups, during Bristol Farms, during holiday, but there was something, and I was like, just take a moment, go decompress, go get a massage, revisit this in a couple days, because this is like super.
It was, I think it was intros, because I I feel like when even if I'm tired, I'm on and I can have a conversation. I just feel like I'm not as engaging. So
it sounded robotic. It didn't sound,
taking the 2 months off. I guess I haven't recorded. Sean was the first one I recorded. Well, I recorded Julie from Gift Shop Plus. I recorded her in Vegas, which that was like the tail end of the setup. So it was like still, and it wasn't, we moved the time up. So it wasn't, because what people don't realize is that a lot of people are on the East Coast, and like, I try, like, some of my days I can't record till 5 p.m. and it's 8 p.m. their time. I'm like, oh my God. So, and that is late for me when I'm starting jobs at 6 a.m. But I will say, having the 2 months off of not recording anything and recording again, as well as recording with people we've already talked to, it's like so familiar, and it was so fun. And it was like, I was so on, and I just felt like it went so smooth. And then I did the intros right after it, and it was like super smooth. Like that's why I was like, okay, I got to do all these. But in answer,
do you feel like the intros directly after
I have to.
I
may
feel
not
that's
always,
the most productive.
Yeah, because it's like I mean, how could you not? I mean, it's like, to do it later is just stupid, because you don't have that momentum. I mean, it's honestly,
and I don't think it needs to be a long-winded intro. It's kind of like, oh my God, I mean, it can be right. I mean, it can be a minute, it could be 3 minutes, it could be, I think it's all kind of like, oh my God, I'm so excited, I just got off the Senate, this is going to be great, blah 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 blah. I mean, I think it depends on how you feel in the moment, but To me,
And
it seems like right after the interview because you've got that energy and it's fresh.
yeah, well, it certainly makes it a lot easier to do. But in answer to your question for how do I prep, I do, if I don't know the person, I will scan their Instagram and I will go through their bio that they've sent. And that's one thing I will say is like, if you are not asking your guests for the intake form is also the waiver, but the intake form is also so you can send us your bio or any information on yourself or your store or what accolades, whatever it is. You know, when you don't send those and I don't really know you very well, or I know you because you've stood out to me. That's how a lot of times how I choose people, because their story is interesting or their Instagram and their story is amazing. And it's something that I haven't seen in the industry. And so, but I don't know you. So when you don't send something over, it's very like I'm going into it blindly, and I don't do conversations. Like some people do pre-conversations, you get on the phone, you talk, so you know you have that synergy, and or the person's like not like Debbie Downer and it's like, oh, I do this, and then there's no more
There's no engagement.
no engagement. But that's about all the I started doing questions in the beginning, and I feel like they were too canned. I feel like there were two, like you
I
were
agree.
listening to a Q&A, and now it's like I literally, and I say this to everybody, it's like it's a natural conversation. Like it's just we're gonna bullshit about everything from your dog and cat into what you do after work, but more like, and in doing so, I feel like people, their guard isn't as up as much, and they are so open and willing to share like a lot of stuff about either their business or whatever it is. Like I feel like not knowing these questions, because I don't even know them, because I don't even write myself questions. Literally I just follow the conversation, and I feel like it's made it much more like honest and much more real, and not so planned.
Well, I think for listeners, it makes them feel that they're maybe at a cocktail party and you're just sitting there in the living room and you're talking to somebody and you're having a cocktail or a glass of wine or whatever. And you're like, oh, I just met this person. So it's very appealing, in my opinion, to a listener. Like that's aside from my true crime. Those are the kind of interviews I like to listen to when someone's doing an interview. It's like, oh, this is cool. Like when I listen to Rob Lowe's thing, it's like, oh, he's so excited. Look, and he's talking about his old 80s movies. And you literally feel like you're like just ear hustling at some party. And I love it. It's like, oh, that's cool. It's exactly like you said, it's not so clinical and cold. It's
Yeah.
organic.
I can't do the I know maybe it's my ADD also that I just can't, but it has, for whatever it's worth, it's worked. I think there's only been one guest that really wanted questions beforehand, and can't blame them, because there are people that are very organized in their own way and they need their boundaries. And when you don't have any boundaries for them, I think that there's a moment of panic for them. So once everything is downloaded into the system, there are show notes that we will, like most podcasts will include show notes, talk a little bit about the show notes and what important things that you believe that show notes need to have.
I mean, I take the bio and then I kind of add my own little flair to it. So the show notes basically is kind of a brief bio of the guest, but I listen to the episode before I give Catherine the final on the show notes. And I kind of integrate talking points that you guys have covered. I try to keep it brief and not get super detailed on everything the episode is. I kind of try to give a base of what the conversation is about and talking points that you guys cover.
You're a
Links.
damn good writer. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I was like,
are.
sister, you have
Well, thank
seriously
you.
missed your fucking calling. Cause like
Well, I come
honestly,
from
like,
a world of publishing, although I wasn't a writer, but so
I mean,
I always did all my my ad copy for clients and stuff like that. It was just
Wow.
something that, yeah,
Copywriter, impressive.
right. Struggling. But so from a back end standpoint and people helping people find the podcast, right? More listeners, more engagement. Adding hyperlinks on there to their website helps for your search engine optimization on the back end. So if people are searching that guest or maybe something they do, I always add a hyperlink on there, which helps on the back end of the podcast. Just when people are Google searching, Google will search and maybe pull that link from an algorithm standpoint. So all those hyperlinks you want to add, the client's website, maybe the client's LinkedIn profile when you're talking about the client's name. We also include their social media channels if they have any. Additional businesses, Michelle, you're really good about always going, hey, add this in if they're selling a book or they want to promote something. If there's a resource such as the Small Business Association, we always include those links, and you always want to do that. All that data that's hyperlinked in your show notes can only help for people finding you organically on Google. It's just, is it a perfect science? No, but it all helps on there. So, and then lastly, a bio photo we always include. So
the bio photo is used for our social media.
The social media for our sound bites, but we also, when the episode populates, I put the bio photo on there, and then that's if you look on the retailwhorepodcast.com, that photo is on their episode.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, see? Well, there you go. So yeah, I mean, it's always good to have, but we like to we use those for the sound bites. And if we don't have a photo, we'll typically use a logo.
So talking a little bit about, because we're towards the end of it, but I want to make sure that we cover social media. And then also we decided to include YouTube this year, which we hadn't done. I think we included TikTok also, that we're doing teasers on TikTok. So social media wise, because obviously that is how most people find us and how we're able to kind of piggyback on other people. It's really important that your guest hopefully does share the recording. There's people that we've had, like one of the first people we had like on the podcast, like she has a candle line that was up and coming, and she whoever in her circle told her, and I'm assuming it's because of the name, because yes, you are going to have, like, in a name like this, there is resistance of, like, I get ghosted all the time when I send out invitations, and I will assume it's because of the name, but this guest was given the information of, like, do not promote it, like you're about to pitch whatever brand, and we don't, like, they didn't want it. So she did zero social media sharing, and it's I mean, it doesn't matter either way, but it does. And you want your guests to show it off and to be like, hey, so you get more listeners and you get more views. And for social media wise, we've chosen with Instagram, we added TikTok, we have
Pinterest,
we
Facebook,
Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's important to emphasize that it's not just the sharing aspect, is not just the guest, promoting our podcast. It's a partnership. We're talking about their brand, their product, and why they even came into our, you came across them and there was some interest there. And with your knowledge base, it's like, this is a great symbiotic relationship, and we can promote the hell out of this with our listeners. So if you could share, that's great. And we're, like you said, we totally understand the horror aspect. Get it. Facebook wouldn't even let us do horror with an E.
Oh my God.
They let us do the name without the E, yet the Instagram was fine with it. That's a whole other conversation. But anyway, so I think it's important that we emphasize that we do get that, but we look at any time we promote anything on social media, it's certainly a partnership. We appreciate any resharing and tagging and posting, and we're more than willing to point people wherever you want us to point you. We're super flexible in that aspect. If you don't want us to tag you, just let us know. Just let
I
us
think
know.
that's the one thing. It's like, the podcast really isn't about me. It's really about promoting other people. To me, it's like, that's what it's always been. It's about, getting whoever's store or product or business in front of people.
Well,
And
it's
now,
community, right? At the end of
yeah,
the day, it's building this amazing community that you saw this niche, this opening for during COVID, right? It was like, how are these retailers? What are they doing? And which motivated you to do an Instagram live, which to me is like podcast light, right? And then that then evolved into now's the time to do this because you got such a great response to doing that. People were hungry for that content and for engaging with other people during that time.
now I'm like blown away, like what a community. It's like, well, I don't know if you guys watch it, but to see like the Serge and Jane be friends with Nathan, and how much Barbara from Daisy's Mercantile, like she's like our biggest fan, and how she will spread the word, and she's made introductions, and she's like, we've had dinner all together. I mean, it's really like, and Nathan says it all the time, like it's for retailers, like you really created we've created this community of the retailers. And I don't, I'll be frank, like when we started this, it was just like, let's just start a podcast. I never anticipated sponsorship.
I do want to jump in and say one thing. I think what you did so beautifully, and I think because we've talked about how I think a lot of people are really interested in starting podcasts, and that's amazing and fantastic. But I think you came into it knowing what you wanted to say and do. Like I remember our first meeting, you came to me and you said stories and lessons from life in retail. And you've done such a beautiful job in sticking to that mission and curating it and evolving with it. Because it's been really awesome seeing how that's grown from interviews and the kind of first kind of round of questions we came up with, and now we're doing solo episodes, and now we're doing different kinds of retailers, different kinds of people, like all aspects of the industry. And so I think one thing for people who are interested in starting a podcast and take inspiration from Michelle, like know what you want to say and then stick to that and evolve with that.
Be strong in your knowledge base. And if you bring that knowledge base, which you have 40 plus years, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's something that really resonates with people. Like, this girl knows her shit. I want to hear about it, and the proof is in the pudding. It just keeps increasing.
I mean, for those who are thinking about it, it's like, there are a million wellness podcasts out there. There's a million. I mean, it just, we had a niche. It's a weird niche, and because it's not all like numbers, and like Matt from our sponsor says from Fine Lines, if I hear another old white man talking about retail, he's like, it's because retail, it's funny. It's like, it's I always say, like, the gift industry is like old ladies in cat sweaters. I don't get I get flack for that, but when you go to Magic or you go to some of these fashion events, and it's loud and it's bright and there's interactive things, and you go to a gift show, 9 times out of 10 there's not live music, or there's not like a DJ, there's not that. And that's I think for I have no idea where I'm going with this right now, by the way. I'm not kidding you.
Well, I think you're just saying that the industry's just changed, and you're just bringing this, as it evolves, you're evolving, but still trying to be
a niche,
niche. But and then also this like, you're within the industry standard. You've seen it. You've seen the cool craziness of Magic in the 80s, and Dayglow and Fred Siegel and all that, and Anthro, and the growth through that, and the people that are listening to you, you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, I totally remember that. Like, hearing Dale from Caton talking about Fiorucci and everything, and Guess, and I was like, I'm not even in the retail industry, and that completely resonated with me. Century City Plaza and all that. I was like, oh my God, I totally remember that. So
Catherine has no idea what Fiorucci is, I bet. Like, what? Like, like Camp Beverly Hills and Fiorucci, but I digress. But I want to make sure we don't go away without mentioning this, is that I think a lot of people that start podcasts, I think the first thing everyone, and I hear this a lot on other podcast interviews, is don't go into it thinking monetization. And I never, ever, ever thought we were going to have sponsorship, or like that really was not at all. Like, I didn't know who was going to listen to us. And I didn't think about, we were very lucky that our first sponsor came to us. Matt from Fine Lines had come to us and said, hey, Matt and Mara, we really believe in what you're doing, because this is something the industry doesn't have and hasn't had. We really want to get behind you and we really want to support you. And we hadn't even hit a year mark and we had a sponsor, and from that we've kind of grown other sponsors, and it's still, we are not going after the low fruit on the tree. Like I've had other people that have mentioned it, and it's like it's not really matches. Like I want to make sure whoever, but it was never an intent. And I think a lot of people start podcasts and instantly think you're going to have people sponsoring you and you're going to have money for ads, and it's like, it don't happen like that. And even Buzzsprout, I'll get a Buzzsprout does do a thing like how, as I'm watching like each week we get a report or email that will say your listener listens for this podcast for this week, and watching them grow from like 43 listens to, I think last week we were at like 354, like in the morning for that one episode.
Mhm.
And it will say now, like at the bottom, you could have made $11 in advertising.
But I think also, like, speaking about Buzzsprout, and like one last thing before we wrap it up, is the analytics side. I mean, there's certainly things where I'll go in there and just completely nerd out and be like, oh, this is really interesting. This is like, we see a spike at this time, when people are really listening. Hey, Michelle, did you know that we have people in Ireland that are listening to us?
Which I love. She reaches
out all the
so
time. There's stuff there as you are slowly promoting that you can really dig down very easily in Buzzsprout. It's not like you have to have a computer science degree. It's all right in front of you to see and follow when people are listening to you and what are the high time. That helps you kind of, as you're building your listenership, kind of tweak things, because we're constantly learning. I was just telling Michelle, maybe you do more that are under an hour. Maybe we keep here, but then there's,
you
kind of
see how this happens. We're at
and
an
the
hour
solo
and
cast.
15.
I do, but the solo cast, like I see huge spikes when you do your solo cast and stuff like that. So there you go. And we'll include all this stuff in there in the show notes.
Thank you guys so much. I hope this helped everyone kind of give everybody both a deep dive into hearing both of you and what you guys, because I always talk about like, this would not ever happen without you guys. Like I can talk to the cows come home, but honestly, like that's about where it would end. Like I am not shy in saying that this has everything to do with the both of you and like how grateful I am. But hopefully this gives everybody an idea of like, what it takes. And this sounds probably a lot more complex, but it's really, they're very easy tools that, and it's not like we have big major investments in, like I have a mic and a laptop, and the rest of it's all digital, and it's like very easy, seemingly, not to me, but seemingly very easy to do.
It all depends on how you want to set it up. Somebody could do this all themselves. They don't need a team of Elisa and Catherine. Yeah. Somebody could theoretically do it themselves, but yeah. Well, you didn't have the bandwidth.
Nope.
But feel free, anybody, to reach out to us if there's any editing questions or marketing questions, listeners.
Thank you guys so much.
More than happy to answer. We love you, Michelle.
We love
and all your craziness.
I love you guys. Like I'm so grateful.
Team Retail Whore.
Team Retail Whore.
TRW.